Hi, this is the Traveling DM, and today I want to talk about how to make empty rooms or emptied rooms more exciting. Now, in a lot of dungeons, you'll find a lot of empty rooms. You'll find a lot of rooms that have already been emptied or where you've killed off the monsters, and the question is, what do we do next? Now, some of them might have hidden items, they might have things that you've specifically put in there, but really the whole point of having empty rooms is to build up the sense of danger. Build up and crank up some of the tension that's in the dungeon. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to actually use treasure cards, and this is a system that I've kind of cribbed a little bit from a game called Hero Quest, which I thought was a really clever way of putting danger into empty rooms and making the whole idea of searching for treasure more than just a dice roll. So in D&D, for example, you usually have a bunch of tables that you roll on for random treasure. It's not very exciting. You get doubles. It doesn't really do anything. There's no mini game involved in there. It definitely doesn't ratchet up tension. So the way that this system works is we have the items that you would find that are treasure items. Now in my game, you can only get regular healing potions through the marketplace, and you can only find anything that's greater than that. So greater healing potions, superior healing potions. So we have our healing potions here, even regular ones. Your party's going to want, because they're going to end up using them during the dungeon anyway. So this is a way to replenish it. We have our bags of gold. 1,000 pieces gold. That acts as a bag of gold. We have more expensive treasure here, like a ruby or a crown. These are worth more. I'll go over why these values are so important in the next video, which will deal with inventory. We have items, right? So you can find chainmail or a scimitar. These type of items that might be useful for your party. They could even include magical items if you want to include them in there. Then we have mundane items. A bucket, a torch, a rope. These are treasures that could be useful but aren't necessarily desirable. Then we have our setbacks here. So we have our traps that are possible, an arrow trap, boulders, what have you. We have encounters like a locked chest or a mimic is where you can put this in here. We have our wandering monsters, just like we did with the exploration of the dungeon. There are guards, there are wandering monsters that you're going to get their attention as you're searching the rooms. And then we have encounters. So like I have a goblin thief here. This is again actually cribbed from somebody who created these for Hero Quest, and I thought these were really brilliant. So like a goblin thief will steal all the potions that the player has while they were searching, right? Or there's pickles. You can have an ogre, and you can see that you roll to see what happens. So these is a bit of like a little bit of a surprise for our players as they're searching. So the way that this works is we then put together a treasure deck, a lot like we did with the exploration deck. That means we're going to populate our dungeon with the treasures that we want. And we're also going to decide how dangerous it is to search for those treasures. So I might say, okay, for every, let's say 5 gold bags, I'm going to have 2 wandering monsters, right? And then I'm going to take my items, let's say, and then I'm going to mix in a couple of traps that I think would be in there. Maybe I'll pick one encounter that could happen, a few of these health potions, and maybe I'll take a treasure, right? And then I'm going to mix it all up. And this becomes our treasure deck. So how does this work? As our players search a room, they can search each room once per player. So each player can come in there, and if they want to use their turn, this is their full turn, to search a room, they can. They would then pull a card to see what they got. This is simulating our random tables. So in this case, got a crown. Great. The player's going to be pretty happy. He got 7.5k worth of gold. He's going to put this in his inventory. That gets discarded. Now, as our cards are flipped through here, anytime there is a setback, like a trap, or another trap, if there's an encounter, that gets discarded after it happens. We don't want doubles for that. Let's go through here. So our players are pulling good ones. And then anything that is wandering monsters, those remain in the deck. all the treasures, they get put into the inventory and taken out of the deck. So what we're doing here is, again, we're ratcheting up the tension inside the dungeon, because our players know that the more they search for treasure, the more treasure they get, but also the odds of having wandering monsters or a trap set off increase. And the more treasure they find, the greater the danger becomes, because the dungeon is trying to kill you. And so eventually what's going to happen is the guards are going to become alerted, more traps are going to be set, and most of the times that you pull the cards will be negative effects until they're all negative effects. The other thing that you can do is you can dynamically change how difficult this dungeon is and how much reward you get. This is something that you really can't do easily, at least, with tables. So what I mean by that is, let's say that they solve a puzzle. And because they solved the puzzle, there's now more treasure available in the dungeon. And so in the middle of the game, you can take more treasure and put it into the deck. Let's say they failed the puzzle, and now the guards are alerted. Well, you can take more wandering monsters and stick them randomly into your deck, and you can show your players, I'm putting these into the deck, and I'm reshuffling the entire deck. So now they're going to have to decide, do they want to search for treasure and risk it, or do they want to avoid all the treasure, which will make it safer for them to pass through and faster, but it means that they'll get less gold when they come out of the dungeon. We want to set that dilemma. We want them to have to constantly face their own greed, right? So we want them to be able to constantly have this dilemma. Do I want to go for greed and risk death and slow my team down, or do I want to go for the gold and get that gold out of this dungeon? You can also put magical items in there that are specifically for this dungeon, and I'll tell my players, there's special items in this dungeon. It's in the deck, and if you don't find it, it's gone forever. I might reuse them later, but the idea is that these are unique items for this dungeon, and so that encourages them to search as well. So what we've done here is, even if there's an empty room, they now have the ability to search. And when they search, they might find something that we specifically put in there, a hidden door, a clue, but if it's just an empty room, there's still tension there, because if they pull wandering monsters out of that deck, they could find themselves in trouble, especially if they're alone. Now, these wandering monster cards don't have to just represent monsters. You can put a boss card in there. So there could be something stalking them, and maybe you put a boss card in there. And now, if they pull that boss card, they're in real big trouble, because now this boss or this mini-boss has found them. So we can ratchet it up. It's a dial. We can crank it up or crank it down to make our dungeon more dangerous, less dangerous, more tension, less tension. And we can sweeten the pot by putting more gold in there as well for our players to entice them to do more searches. So in this way, really, we can turn empty rooms or emptied rooms after the battle and increase that tension for our players. Now, in the next video, I'll cover how we can use the fact that our players are finding all this treasure into a separate minigame involving our inventory. So until then, I've noticed that a lot of YouTubers use their cheesy catchphrase. So I thought maybe hit the road, but I thought maybe that would be too aggressive. Hit the road, get out of here. So I think we're going to go with safe travels. So until then, safe travels. I'm Traveling DM, and I'll see you next time.